You are listening to the Super Freak Media Podcast Network. If you like this podcast, please be sure to show your support and follow us on our other social media platforms. Check out the links listed in the description of this episode to find out more. Thank you.
I want to preface this episode by stating that this is a love letter to Buffy the Vampire Slayer and not Joss Whedon. Buffy is more than Joss. Buffy is its fans, the actors, the crew, the writers, and so much more. And it's not to say that we do not recognise the role that Joss Whedon had in creating this universe, but we choose not to discuss that person in this episode. We want to celebrate the show and its legacy. We stand in solidarity with Charisma Carpenter. Ryan Reynolds, if you are listening, I'm free on Thursday night. If you are free on Thursday night,
come on, Liam, you'd be free any night.
Two homos called Liam turn into a couple of slayers. And
yes, Queen Slay!
Are you in a Whitesnake video? What are you doing over there?
Get our teeth into all things horror and gay and woo!
I'm feeling my oats. Let me feel my own.
This is the one, folks. This is the one that I've done too much preparation for. I think my place of work won't be too happy with how much I've spent on Buffy. So yeah, Buffy the Vampire Slayer is what we'll be discussing this episode. All things Buffy. We'll be discussing a few things about the original film, mainly the TV show, and then an expanded universe there. So hi.
Hi, other Liam. How are you?
Yeah, I am absolutely buzzing.
Yeah, I can't honestly believe, I mean, obviously we said that we were going to get together and do this episode on Buffy. I can't believe it's been 25 years this month since Buffy slayed her way onto our screens. I think it's insane that it's been that amount of time, and also the fact it's still in the forefront of pop culture.
Yeah,
people quote it, people talk about it all the time.
We're gay, we won't let things like this die. I mean...
I think the exact anniversary is the 10th of March. Are you doing anything special for the day?
Well, I'm not. I say something special. My something special will be I'll get home from work and I will be binge watching some of my favourite episodes.
Party.
And I'll probably have a read of a few of the Dark Horse comics, some of my favourite issues in particular, because the expanded universe for Buffy is absolutely insane. So
kicking things off then, how did you get into Buffy?
So I remember an advert playing on BBC Two. It was just before The Simpsons aired, and it was like, coming soon, do you like girls? Well, no, but yes. Do you like vampires? Do you want to see a girl fight some vampires? And I was like, yeah, of course I do.
Was that legit the advert? That's what it asked you?
It didn't. I'm just, in my
slightly
head.
paraphrasing.
In my head, that's how I'd market it.
Do you like girls? Do you like hunky boys?
I do not care for hunky boys.
Like,
do you like Anthony Stewart Head?
That's how they should have marketed it. Do you like Anthony Stewart Head? Yes.
Sign me up.
Watch this show. So that's how I found out about it. And every Thursday night it was on BBC Two, directly after 2 episodes of The Simpsons.
That has unlocked a memory. Like I can remember it used to be on BBC Two.
I remember watching the first episode, being absolutely terrified and wetting my pants. Yes, I'm old enough to watch it when it was airing. So yeah, take away from that what you will.
This is it. I was going to say, did you get into it then from the start? So you were pretty much in it from 97.
Well, yeah. So what was really funny though was I watched it, and I watched we got to episode 3, and I was telling my mum that I couldn't wait to watch Buffy tonight, and she was like, "Oh, I like Buffy," and I was like, "What? You like Buffy?" Turns out my mum liked the film, and she was like, "Oh, have you watched the film of it then?" And I was like, "No, it's a TV show, Mum. Stop being stupid."
Yep.
Like,
I mean, I heard about the film after the TV show as well. So I was adamant that the TV show was the first incarnation of this character. I had no idea that there was this film.
I mean, I was
years before.
In 97, I was very young. So yeah, I had no idea as well. But then I did watch the film, and I must have watched it in between season 1 and 2. And I liked I really liked the film. I loved the film. Less so as I've gotten older, but that's because of She Who Shall Not Be Named in the role of Buffy Summers. But yeah, what about you? How did you get into Buffy?
Well, 97, I would have been extremely young. I would have been 4. So I didn't get into it right away. I actually didn't watch my first full episode of Buffy until way after it had finished. I can remember at the time it was out, because I used to like catch episodes of The Simpsons, and again, like you, I was absolutely terrified of like the episode of Buffy that would come next. I can remember it was always in the intro, because I mean, this show just has an intro that you just cannot.
The best theme tune.
You cannot skip that intro at all, ever.
Buffy and Golden Girls, I can't skip the intro.
Thank you for being a friend.
Like, love a good title sequence, and this is, I think this might be where it started, to be honest. But I can always remember, you know, the episode where Willow falls in love with the demon inside the computer, and there's that shot of that horned demon turn into the camera. I can remember that literally scaring me. It's like absolutely shitless when I was a kid. And it was actually one Halloween, my mum used to buy me like a bag of like treats, like it was Christmas at Halloween. And one of the gifts she bought me, I think when I was like 10 or 11, was the Best of Buffy DVD. So it had all these episodes on, which was essentially like quintessential Buffy. So I watched those episodes completely out of order, but fell in love. Like a nerd, I actually collected the Buffy magazine, and that's how I got all the DVDs. I stopped when Angel came.
Oh my god.
I've not watched any of Angel. Oh my god! Find maybe a bit weird. Buffy, I've watched probably the most out of any TV show now since then.
Same. So Buffy is my favourite TV show of all time. I've got, in my mum's loft, I have tape recordings of the, like, VHS recordings of them when they were airing on BBC Two.
Amazing.
I have the VHS box sets, which I went round charity shops collecting, and I have 3 different editions of the DVD box set, which are near enough. The only thing that changes about them is the box art. But, yeah,
well, why not? I mean, it's if you're a Buffy fan.
Yeah, get into it!
Well, one thing that I want to get into, so I've got 3 questions for you. And I'll obviously answer them myself. But the first one is, who's your favourite Buffy character?
Okay, aside from Miss Summers herself, I'd have to say Willow. I always loved Willow. Okay. She was probably always my favourite. I mean, I had a big crush on Alison Hannigan anyway growing up, but I think it was the fact that she was kind of like the nerdy character, but was equally, I saw her as equally as powerful as Buffy, obviously towards the end with her delving into like magic and stuff like that. I don't know if it was as well, obviously we'll get into it, the fact that this character then turned out to be a queer character, so she was very much with women towards the end of the series, but of course started off with Oz, and the bisexual in me was kind of like, okay, I see this person kind of getting with both. Is this a thing that happens? But yeah, I think I just always liked that she was the smart one. They'd always go to her if they needed like something working out, if it wasn't Giles. So she was my favourite. What about you?
So I have 2, and I can't choose between the both of them because I love them both equally. So my first one is Giles. So not to get too deep into it, but I didn't have a dad growing up, so Giles was like my father figure.
Did anyone have a dad growing up? What's a dad?
I know what a daddy is, though. So,
oh God!
I mean,
Giles.
No, well, yeah, there is that. That's the
that episode where he lets loose with Joyce, and
season 3, Band Candy, incredible.
I love how you're just reeling off the titles. You just know your shit, don't you, when it comes to Buffy?
When it comes to Buffy, that's the degree I should have gone for. But so it's Giles because I just love everything about Giles, and obviously Anthony Stewart Head is a phenomenal performer. I could go on and on, but my other one is Faith. Faith Lehan is an Absolutely. Like, I thought I had a crush for so long on Eliza Dushku, and to some extent, maybe I do.
Yeah.
But I thought, obviously, I was watching a show, and I remember the first episode where Faith came in, and I was like, oh my God, she's everything I want to be and more. And then you got really deeper into the character and you found out more. And then what's incredible is in the Dark Horse continuation. So the Dark Horse, if for anybody who doesn't know, is a comic book company who did season 8, 9, 10, and 11 in the comics, and there was a comic just dedicated to Giles and Faith. So
okay, so that was like your best comic ever, then, yeah. Okay.
So and I'll get into it in a bit more later, but I want to now know: have you got a favorite episode?
Yes, I do have a favorite episode. I've written this down so I can reel this off like you. Season 4, episode 10, Hush, is by far my favorite episode with the gentleman.
Do you hear that?
Gentlemen are coming by, looking in windows, knocking on doors. They need to take 7 and they might take yours. Can't call to mom, can't say a word. You're gonna die screaming, but you won't be heard.
I think as a series, it was groundbreaking anyway with the things that it would do in terms of like against the norm. And I mean, you've seen other shows kind of do similar things. Like I always in my mind, I always compare it to things like X-Files and Supernatural, maybe more recently as a TV show, where they kind of, obviously they had like mysteries per episode, or they had like the monster of the week. But the fact that this show took those bounds, and especially with Hush having a near completely silent episode, is insane. And for it to be one of the most terrifying episodes of TV ever. I mean, I literally, in preparation for this, I was rewatching Buffy anyway, but I think I'm only into season 3, like the end of season 3 at the moment. And I was like, do I skip ahead and watch this? But this was quite late last night. And even now, I was like, I'm not going to watch Hush before bed, because just the thought of like these things gliding past the window.
Wait. A huge shout out to the gay icons that are the gentlemen.
I'm gay.
The campest villains you will ever get.
It's the way that they removed the scalpel out of the medical case, and just the flourishes. And I mean, just they're everything.
They are the champions of the Limp Wrist Brigade. I love it.
They really are. I've never thought of it like that, but they are. They're as camp as a row of tents, aren't they? They're just so insanely camp.
Like before, I have 2 favorite episodes, and for 2 very different reasons. So the first one is season 2, episode 7, Lie to Me. It's the episode where Buffy's like old friend comes back and nobody really trusts him, played by the beautiful Jason Behr, who was in
Roswell,
which I was obsessed with. It was part because I really fancied him, but I really loved that you got a little bit more of Buffy's history, and it has one of my favorite lines, and it's the actual closing lines of the show.
Does it get easy?
What do you want me to say?
Lie to me.
Yes, it's terribly simple. The good guys are always stalwart and true. The bad guys are easily distinguished by their pointy horns or black hats, and we always defeat them and save the day. No one ever dies, and everybody lives happily ever after.
Liar.
And then she calls him a big fat liar, and the episode ends. But
bonsoir, je m'appelle Big Fat Liar.
My other one is season 5, episode 16, The Body. Now, a lot of people, The Body appears quite high in a lot of people's lists. But similar to Hush, it's because of the sound design in it. There's no music score in any of the scenes in this. Is a completely raw, visceral episode exploring grief in its various stages. But I think it has some of the most standout performances in the show. It's where you got to see that these people as well, like the show, you get to see a lot of dramatic acting in this, you get to see a lot of comedy acting, but this is where you're just like, oh my God, these people have some chops, especially
SMG really shows off what she can do in this episode. 100%.
Absolutely. And then Anya does a speech where she doesn't understand why this is happening, and she'll never get to live again, and it breaks my heart. I've just got goosebumps.
Yeah, literally same.
But I don't understand. I don't understand how this all happens. How we go through this. I mean, I knew her, and then there's just a body. And I don't understand why she just can't get back in it and not be dead anymore. It's stupid. It's mortal and stupid. And Xander's crying and not talking, and I was having fruit punch, and I thought, well, Joyce will never have any more fruit punch, ever, and she'll never have eggs, or yawn, or brush her hair, not ever, and no one will explain to me why.
This is where we start crying on the podcast for the first time.
There's a chance I may do, because this show does mean a lot to me. So, on a more serious note, who do you find the most attractive on the show?
I think I'm not going to lie. I think I've always had a bit of a thing for Xander. Other than obviously, I had my crush on Sarah Michelle Gellar. I can remember going through school. She was like my desktop background for a good few years while I was in secondary school. So yeah, I think Sarah Michelle Gellar and Xander, I kind of always wanted them two to get together. I knew it was never going to happen because they were like best friends, but I don't know. I know that they became like brother and sister, and that happened, but I always felt sorry for Xander because I always thought I was the Xander in those situations. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think the obvious choice would obviously be to talk about some of the other sexy vampires in the show. But what about you? You're going to talk about a sexy vampire, aren't you?
To keep the ball rolling, I'm going to talk about two sexy vampires, and of course, I can't be Team Spike and I can't be Team Angel. I'm Team both of them in bed with me at the same time.
Oh wow!
I'm Team Eiffel Tower. I'm Team. So Spike was the bad boy everyone wanted, and Angel was the one that everyone wanted to bring home to their mum. Oh my God, the pair of them together are just beautiful. But saying that, I had the sweetest crush on Oz for a good while. I just found him to be the most charming, cutest little freak in the world. It doesn't stop there. I fancy near enough every male character who comes into this show, I'm not going to lie. They just decided, when they were casting this, they were like, let's get the hottest. And shout out to, like, there's maybe 1% of me that's bisexual, because let's not forget Eliza Dushku, Charisma Carpenter, SMG herself, Emma Caulfield. Everyone's really sexy in this show, and it reminds me of...
absolutely. They're an attractive Scooby gang.
Where I want to go with this, so we've talked about some of our favourite people, favourite episodes, but is there any standout moments in the show to you? Like, well, that no matter how long, it could be years since you watched an episode of Buffy, but are there any like standout moments you can think of?
I think the body, which obviously we've mentioned, always stands out because it was such a break in the show. Like the whole that season was about them kind of defeating this great evil, and then for them to have this break and it to be something like so mundane and so human that happened that completely defeats the Slayer was such a... I mean, it is just incredible writing, everything. I think that episode. I think the finale is... I think it's a divisive one for a lot of people, but I still really enjoyed it, and I like the fact that all bets were off, and obviously, spoiler alert, we do lose some of our favourite characters, and I don't think that's always something that happens in TV show finales. I think sometimes producers, directors, whatever, writers are scared to take those risks. So that was great, and I think they did a great job with that. There's certain monsters that kind of stuck out to me and maybe had an impact on me, obviously, like the Gentleman, De Kinderstad, Gnarl, the episode Gnarl freaks me the hell out. Even the Praying Mantis teacher episode kind of gets me a little bit. Like, I mean, it's there's a lot of like standout moments, and it's funny when I was looking at like the series and the episodes to see that each kind of season had some real standout like monsters. It's like, like when Doctor Who had like a good week and you were like terrified after watching an episode of Doctor Who. It was kind of like obviously very much that growing up with Buffy as well. But what about you? Did you have any standout moments?
Yeah, there's I mean, I could cop out and say the whole show, but obviously like there are the iconic monsters, and for me, one of the episodes that doesn't get its dues to me is Inca Mummy Girl.
Yes, it's just kind of heartbreaking. I think
it's such a tragic episode, and then obviously Buffy's there like, I don't think I should kill this girl. Yeah, this girl's killing people, but she's kind of like me, and it's just like. Yeah, so I always think of Inca Mummy Girl, always stands out to me. And then Band Candy, which we discussed before, because the Halloween episodes of Buffy were always so good.
Absolutely,
I mean, you've got the Halloween episode where, you've got Ethan Rayne and I want to go with the man with the musket, where everybody turns into their Halloween characters, and then obviously
it's such a genius idea, and I can't believe it's like so not been done before like that. That's so good. Crazy.
And anyone who's tried to imitate it since just hasn't done it well. But yeah, the Halloween episode, oh my god, but Band Candy was so good. The one where all the adults turn into teenagers tonight, and you've got Giles becoming Ripper again, who's like
just a complete thing badass. Yeah, absolutely.
And then you've got Joyce Summers being a little hoe, and
she was such a hoe.
And good for her, honestly. And in fact, if it weren't for Giles and Faith, I think Joyce Summers would maybe be. I think she's my favourite character.
I hate to use the expression, but I think she's definitely a MILF of the 90s, 100%.
Absolutely.
So, no, I get that. I think, just thinking about it, Prophecy Girl, the finale of season 1, I think was a really, really good moment. The moment she realises, when she says, I'm 16 and I don't want to die, and she knows that she has to die, and all she wants to do is just go to the dance with her friends. And I mean, I think, obviously we'll get into it talking about the original film, but I did like that they kind of carried over that moment of her having a prom dress and a leather jacket and all of that. I thought that was ace. So
wanted a leather jacket for so long because of this show.
And a prom dress.
And a prom dress, obviously. Yes. But that's we can take a moment then to talk about some like iconic outfits in the show, because this show
fashion
was impeccable, like impeccable taste, and whoever was in charge of wardrobe for that, for every single episode, just nailed it so well. Some standout moments would be obviously the prom dress with the leather jacket, Spike's leather trench coat, and to me, Willow's wardrobe for the first couple of seasons just being completely horrendous in all the right ways.
Absolutely. I mean, so bad it's good. That's what she was going for.
To be fair, with how how much fashion takes a resurgence. Some of the stuff she wears now, you're like, I've seen somebody wearing that. Like if you watch Euphoria, some of them are wearing that now.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very much back in style, I think, the 90s, isn't it, at the moment? And I mean, that's, I suppose, I don't know, it is dated in so many ways, like when you look at the show, like, I mean, particularly obviously the tech. I mean, there was an episode I watched recently was Gingerbread, where they get accused of being witches, and Willow is on the clunkiest laptop. And I'm like, there's no way she's connected like wirelessly to the library with that thing. Like, there's nothing happening. But it adds to the charm of it. I think it's very much a show of its time, even though it was so progressive. I don't know. I can't imagine it being made now, if that makes sense, with today's technology.
That's the thing. There's a current run of comics by Boom Studios who's done a reimagining of Buffy for the modern age. It's not my cup of tea, and maybe it's because I'm too much of a
purist.
I'm not a purist, because I think you can enjoy both. But like, I don't know, Buffy holds too much of a hook on my heart, especially being in that time period, because. Has she got an iPhone like in her hand on the front cover? Is that the I was going to say when I've kind of looked, I saw that and thought it was a bit odd, but like the fact is, like, Cordelia is a completely different character in it, because obviously in the show in the 90s, if you wanted to be the popular girl, you had to be the bitch. You had to be the one, the bully and stuff. Whereas she's the complete opposite in the comics. In the reimagining, she's woke. she's really nice. She's woke. Yeah. She's like lovely to everyone. Because obviously, how you'd be popular back then, translating that to now, you'd be called a dickhead if you were just treating people like that.
Absolutely.
But then, like, one good thing, because I think the character who hasn't aged well out of everyone else is Xander. Xander's not aged well. Xander now, he's just an incel. Xander's whole character. And he's quite, and I mean, I'm not going to mention who will not be named, but he's very, you read Xander now.
It felt like it was his voice maybe coming through.
Yeah.
I know what you mean, yeah.
But it's the way that Xander treats women. And you like, when you're watching it in the 90s or even in the early 2000s, you don't really see it as much, and you see it's played off for laughs. But nowadays, you do think, Xander, you need therapy, hun. You really need therapy.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there, isn't there?
But one thing that they do in the reimagined comics is they make Xander so much more likable and so much more realistic. And the fact is, you find out he's got this online blog, and he's talking about being deeply, deeply depressed and having to put on an act. And you really like. It harkens back to the Zeppo episode where you find out Xander just doesn't feel like he fits in at all, and he's the butt of the joke. But it ramps that up even more. Yeah. And you find out that this character is so deeply flawed that every action that he makes comes from a place of trying to get people's attention and stuff. Whereas that never came across in the show. And if you do watch the show now, you like... I'm not shitting on Xander. I'm not shitting on Xander too much because obviously I love him. I just love him. But there are certain concepts with Xander that really hasn't aged well at all.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I mean, I think as well, what I always thought was quite unique about the character was he really was, I suppose, the only character that was there that didn't have like this special skill to bring to the table other than to be, I suppose he was the glue, wasn't he? He held everyone together, and he was valuable in that sense. And I don't know, I suppose, definitely if that character was written nowadays, I think his approach to the female characters around him, I know particularly obviously in the early days towards Buffy, he gets very, very very creepy, whiny and mardy and kind of obsessed with the idea of getting with her.
He's the nice guy, and he's like, Buffy should be with me because I'm the nice guy. And it's like,
I think what made it more obvious is like when you said Oz came along, because Oz was a lot different. Yeah. He was a lot more pure just in his motives and chill about things, obviously. But
Oz ended up pissing me off. But yeah, we'll go. Oz and Veruca.
I can remember as well, you know, another thing that of how I got into Buffy. This might be something I don't know if you were going to talk about when you talk about the expanded side of it, but did you ever play with Top Trumps as a kid?
Yes.
I had the Top Trumps Buffy kind of set, and I can remember always seeing there was a picture of Veruca in that. And I can remember saying to my mum, like, I'm sure this is something you get on your foot. And she was like, yeah, it is. And I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, she is a fungus, ingrown, horrible. Anyway, but while we're speaking on Veruca, that's one thing I do want to talk about now is the music in Buffy, because I feel like the one good thing about Buffy the Vampire Slayer is it's got this core cast of characters, but it has certain places that end up becoming characters of their own. So the Bronze, for example, becomes a character, I think.
Absolutely, yeah.
And we get some of the best music in the Bronze. Veruca's band, for a start, there's a song called Over Fire by a band called THC. I listen to that a lot. So I listen to a lot of the music from Buffy. There's an episode where they get Chivo Mato in there singing Sugar Water, and you just get some incredible music in there. I was so annoyed when I got to the age of like 15, 16 and realized that the Bronze was a complete bullshit idea, because
how has someone not made it? Like, how is it not a destination somewhere? Some weird 90s grunge bar that you can go and
that's what I was expecting when I was in high school. I was fully expecting to every week be in this bar and dancing like the hoe that I am was.
Those spaces definitely didn't exist for me, like growing up. I can remember, I think there was like under 18s nights at the ice arena, like you go skating to a disco one evening, but that's not, I don't know, brooding in a corner with a bloody swing chair and it being all smoky and there being like a live band. No, I know what you mean. I think that obviously the high school, the library, the magic shop, even obviously the house, like that very much becomes like a fortress and a place at the end, isn't it, as well?
Every time a new Sims comes out, I create Buffy's house on there.
No way. Really?
Yeah. I have to try and make Buffy's house on there, or I try and make like the library or the magic box.
She had a great house though. Like
gorgeous house.
Can we just ask what their insurance policy must be? Because every bloody episode that window gets smashed in.
I think the insurance companies who were in Sunnydale were making an absolute bucket. They really were.
They must have been, because
they were the real villains of the show.
The amount of times the ground collapsed, a hell portal appeared, and we just lost several buildings. And
the show even expands on that, which is really cool, especially in season 3 when you get introduced to the mayor, Richard Wilkins, but then you find out that, you know, oh, okay, the police are in on it and the principal's in on it, so people do know what all this shit's happening. And then I love that in like. So I feel like season 3 has one of the strongest finales ever. So
literally just watched it last night. The whole reveal is
it's the lead up to that as well. So you've got the prom, which makes me cry when Buffy gets a Class Protector award, and everyone's saying how you've always, like, yes, we don't really pay you much attention, but we know you've always been there for us. And then just that finale of all the class of 99 are banding together to fight this evil, and you get a real sense of, oh, everyone in Sunnydale knows what the is going on, so why the rent must be so cheap for them.
That's it. They're homeless anywhere else, but they come to Sunnydale, they get given a house just to feed the vampires. But yeah, that reveal, the mayor just being like, I'm a snake. It's such a great transition, because obviously we then go from high school, into, and I love that line as well, where Oz says we survived, and they're like, yeah, we did, and he's like, no, we survived high school. And then obviously the rest of the next seasons and so on are going to be college and onwards. I think it's great.
Well, that's
so good.
Even though I was very young watching it, the journey I went on with Buffy really mirrored life at the time. So before we get into some deeper things with Buffy, because I do want to talk about it more than just surface level, take a moment to just go back to the movie.
Yes, for sure.
So if there are people out there who don't know, you may not know, and that's fine. But there is a movie that came before the TV show. In fact, the TV show references the movie quite a lot. They even have a few callbacks. But yeah, there was a film with Kirsty Scott on the Floor Swanson as our titular character. But also,
the thing is, what's funny is I've written down the entire cast apart from her name. Even though she's the titular character, I think, she's a controversial one, isn't she? Outside of the acting, I suppose.
Well, acting used in a very loose term, but that film does have an incredible cast. I mean, you've got some icons in there. You've got the beautiful, may he rest in peace, Luke Perry playing Pike, and then you've got his best mate played by David Arquette, who, again, beautiful man.
I mean, I said this to you before we started recording. I think the complicated feelings that it made me have when he turns into a vampire and me finding him more attractive with pointy ears and fangs was a little concerning. But I don't know. I've always loved David Arquette.
It even had some great characters who were background characters who were big names. I mean, Hilary Swank was in the film as one of Buffy's on and off again friends. You've got Paul Rubens playing one of the greatest vampires who's ever existed on screen, and also reprises that role in What We Do in the Shadows TV show. Which makes me very happy. And then you've got Buffy's original Watcher, Merrick, played by the icon that is Donald Sutherland, who in this is camp as
he really is. He's creepy as hell. I noticed, because I mean, I will say I've only recently just watched this because I thought, do you know what? I might watch where it started to then contrast it to the series. And I will say it very much made me grateful for the series because I mean, there's a lot that is improved when the series was made. 5 years later.
I mean, it does some great world building, and the idea, you really get the idea of what the Slayer is from that film, and you do get this whole Valley Girl becoming this instrument of good, but it's also got a really fun cameo in it. In a very small role, but Seth Green plays one of the vampires in it, who obviously then goes on to play Oz. But going back to Donald Sutherland as Merrick for a moment, there's a bit in the film where he's training with Buffy, and he just goes up and he flourishes his moustache, and
there's no reason at all other than just be campers balls. Absolutely.
And I really want to know whether that was his decision.
I think he ad-libbed that 100%.
It had to be. But no, for anybody out there who's curious about it and hasn't watched the film, I think it's worth a watch.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I will say I wasn't the biggest fan of it. And I think, again, it's kind of like when you have, I don't know, the luxury version of a food that you absolutely love. So I don't know, you have a Marks and Spencer's pizza and then you have an Asda Smart Price special. It's kind of like there's no comparison. But I was surprised at the cast, how many people were in it. Ben Affleck popping up as well on the basketball court and just randomly being a bit weird. And Rutger Hauer, obviously.
Hot in it, though.
He is, yeah. Rutger Hauer just being as well the campus kind of Dracula style character that we've seen.
He really reminds me of Leslie Nielsen in Dracula Dead and Loving It.
Yeah, really for sure. I would say as well, going back to Donald Sutherland, I'd say he's the perfect bridge between Anthony Heads Giles and then Peter Vincent from Fright Night. I feel like he's kind of like the middle ground between those two characters. The main problem I had though with this, and I think obviously what changed a lot when we kind of then got to the series, was the dynamic of the characters and the friends. Obviously Buffy and Pike were kind of like the two characters you grow to love and kind of stay with at the end, but the girl group, her group of friends, were just awful. Like, they were all like the worst versions of Cordelia, especially Hilary Swank.
But they were, to me, they were. It was a big callback to Heathers. To me, that you've got that Buffy was very much the Veronica, but she was still also like a girl. And then, because at one point they're even dressed like the Heathers, and you're just like, I might as well be watching Heathers.
Yeah, absolutely. As well, one thing, if we're linking it back to the queer side of things, one thing I did think, which stood out as maybe a staple of the times, was the scene where Buffy gets on a motorcycle, and before she does that, the biker men are like, do you want to feel some real power between your legs? And she's like, no thanks, robs the motorbike, and as soon as she does that, gets called a dyke.
No.
That was incredible. Like, progress. We've made progress.
Happens to the best of us, really, doesn't it?
Every Saturday night for me. But yeah, it was interesting. I don't think it was what I expected. I will say, I think the casting was perfect then to go to Sarah Michelle Gellar. But one thing that did kind of creeped me out a little bit was the fact I was obviously watching it and hearing the lines, and it still very much felt like the Buffy TV series, like some of the dialogue, like when she's walking and she's like, I'm alone, any vampires, and that sort of thing. Like, it was interesting. Not what I expected, but I'm glad we got the TV series, if I'm being honest.
And to be fair, the Buffy film has the iconic cheerleading moment where, how funky is your chicken? How loose is your goose? Which I won't stop singing now.
How funky is your chicken? How funky is your chicken? How loose is your goose? Our goose is totally loose.
Really stuck in my head. My hole is totally loose. But it's great because if you do watch the film and then go back to watch the TV show, it does call back because Buffy mentions a lot about burning down her old high school gym, and you realise, that happens. And then there's a really good comic retelling of the film that really bridges the gap because Angel turns up in it and everything. So there's a comic reimagining of the film where the likeness is Sarah Michelle Gellar, but also Merrick appears in season 2, I believe, in a flashback scene, but it's obviously not played by Donald Sutherland, it's played by someone else, and Sarah Michelle Gellar's put in this really awful wig to show that she's younger. But it is a great way to see where Buffy was when she came to Sunnydale, because she still had this Valley Girl mentality, and then became it's what I love the most about Buffy is it's very rare that you root for the main character in a TV show, I think.
Absolutely,
Especially as a queer audience watching it, it's not usually the main character who we resonate so much with, but I feel like Buffy's journey resonates so loudly with a queer audience. To me, more so in season 2 and 3 than any other. For example, in season 2 finale Becoming, Buffy comes out to Joyce as a vampire slayer, and we get the iconic line,
honey, are you sure you're a vampire slayer? I mean, have you tried not being a slayer?
Mom.
It's because you didn't have a strong father figure, isn't it?
It's just fate, Mom. I'm the slayer. Accept it.
And then gives Buffy an ultimatum saying, if you walk out that door, don't ever come back, which to a lot of LGBT youth at the time was a very similar conversation that was happening. And Buffy decides, there's something greater in me than what I need from here. So goes to live a life, and then we find out she becomes Anne, this weird waitress stuff. But that aside, that to me,
that's it. Like that character, as you said, the Slayer is the perfect metaphor for being queer. And I mean, it speaks so strongly on a queer experience in the fact that she has no choice in being the Slayer. That is who she is. She's born that way, the same way as so many of us are born the way that we are. And
okay, Lady Gaga.
No sleep. Bus. Club. Another club. Another club. Another club. Plane. Next place.
But I think, as well, I think that, like you said, with the lines from Joyce, like, is it because you didn't have a strong father figure in your life? It's like, it couldn't be more on the nose, but at the same time, not be kind of, I don't know, patronising to a queer audience.
It's not beating you over the head with it. And I think one of the strengths that this show has is when it does start to introduce, it has queer themes, but never is outrightly queer until we get to season 4 with the introduction of Tara McClay and Willow's subsequent attraction to Tara, which to me was the first time I saw on screen a queer relationship that wasn't demonized, wasn't the subject of hate and abuse from the outside world. It was this really beautiful, complicated love story of someone coming into their identity. We can talk a lot about, Willow is canonically bisexual. She never gives up her attraction to men. But the show doesn't make you feel that because it does push the lesbian narrative more than the bisexual. But the queer lens then goes on to Willow and Tara, who are two characters who, if we talk about like callbacks to like the Tumblr days, if we're talking about an OTP, it's Willow and Tara for me every day. I think it's one of the most beautiful relationships to watch happen on screen, because these were two characters as well who, if you saw lesbians portrayed on screen, particularly, if they were in a relationship, one of them had to assume the role of the man by being butch or,
absolutely
presenting as mask, whereas but it never happened in Buffy. They were both too feminine.
It was just so organic, wasn't it? And I mean, again, going back to that kind of the episode of Hush, that to me was such a turning point of an episode, because that's where I feel like they physically feel that spark between them when they create the magic to kind of get the vending machine against the door to stop the gentleman. Like it happens in such a unique way. And I mean, I believe, like when I was doing research and actually looking at it, I believe they were the first lesbian couple to be featured
on a primetime TV show,
US TV. So it was way ahead of its time. And I mean, like, we're talking like late 90s, early 2000s. This was happening. Like, still now, I don't know. I still don't think we figured out the right dose of queer representation in TV all the time. So I completely agree. I think they were my faves.
Although their relationship does then end up going into a trope that nowadays is, I mean, it was tired back then, but it just wasn't spoken of enough back then, was the bury your gays trope. And Tara, spoiler alert, but I want to say spoiler alert, but go and watch Buffy. But at the end of season 6, Tara dies in order to further some tragedy in Willow. And when I was reading this, I found out that she was originally planned to die at the beginning of season 6. But
they extended, didn't they?
There was a lot of pushback from a lot of writers saying, no, it's not fair. It's going to come out of nowhere. And that whole, because it was coming at a time where Willow was battling addiction. And Tara was the perfect audience point of view to see how bad that addiction had gotten. Again, on a broad sense of the term, was very much a metaphor for, like, if you think of the show as a metaphor for puberty in general, not just queerness. So, for example, you've got like Oz, a werewolf, can't control his rage and grew hair in places that didn't have hair before. You've got Willow, who becomes addicted to magic, and then further on the line we get Dawn, who's like some sort of magical entity, but is really struggling to feel real. Which was just resonating on...
That was it. It spoke to so many different people's experiences, and I think the queerness just happened to be one aspect of so many that it catered for. And I mean, it really was the show that had it all. I think even as an older audience, I mean, like now, obviously, I'm way out of my teen years. I still look back on it and still kind of identify with the characters and maybe things that they're going through. I suppose more now, it's been like since the characters have like left college and then have to be adults, like that would have been like my early 20s, and whereas maybe when I first watched it I was still a teenager, so I was seeing, like you said, the puberty side of things, coming to terms with who you are, all that sort of stuff. That's the thing for horror, like kind of in general, and we've said this obviously a few times before, the fact that as a genre it can speak on so many really deep and important issues but still do it in a way that's entertaining and isn't kind of, I don't know, it doesn't have to be a gritty kitchen sink drama. It has that fantasy element to it, so it still feels like entertainment, I suppose, in a way, even though you're getting all of this quite deep stuff thrown at you.
We'll talk a lot about like the positives of Buffy. I mean, that's not to say it's a perfect show. No. There are, like, as we've said before, there are some concepts that haven't dated well, particularly if you look at the character of Spike as well. Spike hasn't aged well.
No,
and I mean,
it's a show that's about vampires, but it still managed to get those beats in there of like things that unfortunately, a lot of women, a lot of queer people would come at it and still be able to go, I've experienced something like that, just without the beast behind it, if that makes sense.
Well, one thing that the show, like speaking of Spike, one thing that the show uses its male characters for is to explore the idea of challenging gender norms. And I mean, it obviously does it with, that's what Buffy was written for. Buffy was written to challenge that idea of, the helpless female who can't fend for herself and has to rely on a man. But more so in the characters of Xander and Spike, does it challenge the views of masculinity and what masculinity should be, particularly in Spike's relationships with people. I mean, Spike, if you look at his relationship with Drusilla, for example, he becomes the subservient. He becomes the doting one who would do anything for her, and he becomes kind of like a whipping boy. But when that relationship ends, you see him trying to assert his dominance. So when he gets into his relationship with Harmony, for example, you see that, look, he's just doing a typical male thing of trying to, like, he's just been under the thumb of someone, so he's trying to really reassert. And then when it comes to Buffy, his relationship with Buffy, he realizes as much as he tries to be, the man, tries to be this domineering figure, that's never going to happen with Buffy, because there's already a pre-existing power dynamic between the pair of them. I just want to take a little quote from an essay that I've been reading, of all things. And it's by Amy Chin, who says that Spike occupies a series of paradoxical and liminal spaces that make him impossible to categorize in any post-Enlightenment way, implying that his gender and sexual identities resist modern labels and interpretations. He seems to exist in a space free from today's understanding of sexual and gender hegemonic structure. In so much love with the show that I've actually read essays, which I haven't done since I graduated. So
I mean, I think it's essay worthy. I mean, like we said, this show was decades ahead of its time, and I think, in all fairness, talking about the roles of gender, I think, maybe if it was made in the 80s, I think Xander might have been the Vampire Slayer, in all fairness, in that friend group, and Buffy would have been, I don't know, like obviously how it was set out, she would have been the dumb blonde that's there as bait to lure the vampires in. And I think that whole flipping of that dichotomy and that dynamic between those characters just worked so well, and I mean led to a series that I don't really think runs out of steam. I think it ends like perfectly. I'm kind of glad that it ended when it did, because I think with TV shows especially, you can always get to a point where you're like, okay, like we don't need any more seasons. Well,
originally we're supposed to end with season 5, and if it would have ended there, I'd have been distraught. But I see that they did wrap up a lot with the end, with season 5, and you could, before it was obvious that this wasn't going to be the end, you could see bits that you're like, oh, okay, it does feel like a final season. And then season 6 happened. People have a lot of gripes with season 6. I think it's one of the greatest, but that's because it contains Once More With Feeling, which it is one of the
episode.
Yeah, one of the first shows to do. Like everyone's done a musical episode now, but this was one of the first, and one of the greatest as well. My favorite song from that, and I listen to it, I'd say weekly, is "I'm Under Your Spell." Tara sings to Willow, and then it culminates in the orgasm, and it's fantastic. Good for them. But also shout out to the "I Got the Mustard Out" guy.
They got the mustard.
It's not just us.
I'm always fighting your corner. Love them so much.
I love that episode so much. And like you said, so many shows have done that sort of thing now. They've had like a special one-off episode, and for that to have done that at that time and it be so successful, it's just I don't know, it was a game changer in so many ways. Absolutely it was.
The show changed everything you thought a woman should be or could be, and I think that's why Buffy's the success it is today because of the actresses in the show. I think that's not to say that the male actors weren't great, but the actresses in the show gave so much gravitas to their performances. And Sarah Michelle Gellar in this role is, I mean, she is synonymous with Buffy now. If they were to remake Buffy,
I was going to ask you that. I was going to say, do you ever want to see a continuation of Buffy? Do you ever want to see these characters again in like either a film or TV series, or would you ever want to see them recast and it be redone?
I mean, I'm going to say no, but I would never be entirely against the idea of it, purely because I'd have been on board if it weren't for the current Boom Studios comics, which have just shown me that, I don't know if this would work for me. But I mean, I wouldn't be opposed. I mean, if we're going to talk about like fan casting, if they were to do that, I do have a list.
Kelly Reynolds, number one.
Friday!
Well, you beat me to it.
Sorry.
Kelly Rowland would be Joyce Summers. Kelly Rowland would be Joyce Summers. And I mean, because what I would love the idea is her approaching Angel and Spike and being like, no, my daughter's better than some in a Christmas sweater. So yeah, we got there. Fan casting. I mean, there's some great talent out there, but it's always changed because obviously to cast Buffy now is I've always fan cast Buffy in my head as the years go by, but then you have to try and you don't want the Grease syndrome of like 40-year-old people playing teenagers.
I know what you mean. Yeah,
but some like Zendaya.
Yeah, would kill it. Absolutely.
Would be such, because I've really gotten into her from Euphoria, which at first I struggled with a lot. But
I'm not gonna lie, I've started watching it as well. I gave into the peer pressure.
I struggled a lot with that.
I started doing drugs and I'm wearing glitter every day. So
same, yeah. But yeah, I struggled a lot with that show, and then I started to really get into it. But I think Zendaya's a great actress because my exposure to Zendaya was limited to her portrayal as MJ in the Spider-Man films, but I think she'd make an incredible Buffy. I mean, I believe she's 24, so if they were going to do it, they'd have to do it soon. But yeah,
I mean, linking in with that, do you not think that's kind of shows like Euphoria maybe do owe a lot to Buffy? Because although, I mean, in reflection, thinking about it, I do think that casting-wise, we didn't have the most representation in terms of people of colour in Buffy. No. And I do think that obviously is something that's dated and does speak volumes of the time. But at the same time, to have shows like, I don't know, I can think of so many, even the likes of Stranger Things, Riverdale, Euphoria, all these kind of shows that have like a teen ensemble cast. I can't really think of many shows before Buffy that gave you that and did it so well.
Yeah, it was that. Buffy's the perfect blend of like a teenage drama and the horror genre blended into one. So we do get like if you look at the, to me, it's the Chilling Adventures of Sabrina is the one that's maybe come the closest to me in terms of Buffy.
I'm so gutted that got cancelled. Like, there was so much more life in that, I think.
There was. I mean, they did really well in expanding on the comics, because where the comics ended was the whole story of season 1 and a little bit into 2. But
it's really that short. There really isn't that much.
Yeah, there's only a couple of issues of the comics. But yeah,
again, I love that because of the horror references, though. Like the fact that, particularly in the second season, I think they went ham with the horror references with the titles and everything.
But great. That's just reminded me of another one of my favourite episodes of Buffy. Is they had the balls to introduce Dracula into the show, and it's so good. A lot of modern shows do owe a lot to Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and it's not the be all and end all, but it kind of did set the blueprint going forward. The one thing I am very gutted about, and you can see clips of it on YouTube, is it was going to be turned into an animated show with the full cast. Well, it was the full cast bar Sarah Michelle Gellar, but they did cast somebody who sounded just like her, who I believe then they used for the games. Now,
I was going to say, the games.
If you have not played Buffy the Vampire Chaos Bleeds, find a way of getting it. It's one of the greatest games ever made. And I used to play, I think it was the 5th level where you got to play as Faith. And I would replay that level constantly.
You'd die just at the end, so you could restart the level.
Oh, it's such a good game.
But I mean, again, I can't think of TV shows that have gone on to have the life that Buffy has, after the fact. And I mean, we're making this to celebrate 25 years, and there's still comics being created. There's still this buzz as to whether or not there's going to do something. I feel like it was the 20th anniversary when they got all together for Entertainment Weekly, and they shot that cover. And I can remember seeing them all posted on Instagram and the first images, and just seeing that cast back together again was just magic.
Filled my heart with joy. And they are very active on social media with one another. I mean, they're always posting how much they've always commented on each other's Instagrams, which is really lovely. And I mean, Sarah Michelle Gellar and Freddie Prinze Jr. to me are the couple to aspire to be. If they ever break up, I will be really, really pissed off. But no, I would like to talk a little bit then about the expanded universe. There are some great mediums out there to check out if you want to explore further than the TV show. As I said, the Dark Horse Comics did a continuation of the TV show that lasted 4 seasons. Really good, and it was some great spin-offs, and it was through the comics that we got to see Buffy exploring her sexuality too. I mean, they never canonized her exact sexuality, and it did come across that she was experimenting, but also that's perfectly valid too. People experiment. She hooked up with one of the other potential slayers called Satsu. They spent a passionate night together. In fact, Buffy fell under a spell that could only be broken with true love's kiss, and Satsu was the one to break that. But it expands really well, and you get to see this world after all the potential slayers have been called and become slayers. But then you get to see, because it explores that Buffy is the oldest living Slayer who's ever lived, because they don't make it.
I was going to say they dispose of a lot. They get rid.
It explores how that has an impact on her abilities, because obviously the show shows you that she does have all these supernatural abilities, and then you find out it was derived from a demon, etc., etc. But it shows you how that these abilities then mature and become a lot more. It gets a lot of characters back who we unfortunately lost, which did make me happy to some extent. I mean, Anya gets to come back, which...
Yeah, I mean, that's probably my only gripe with that finale, was just how fast they just kind of got rid of one of my favourite characters. But at the same time, I understand... this is war.
This is why
it would happen in an instant.
It's why I can never be 100% Team Xander, because his treatment of Anya, I don't care that
he does get his eye pulled out though, doesn't he? So
good.
I don't know.
Good, but Anya was done so dirty towards the end, and she was a phenomenal character. We get to see Dawn get such a bigger role, although they do end up making Xander and Dawn a couple, which is a big no from me.
No.
Disgusting.
I mean,
Disgusting!
Can I just ask, what are your feelings on Dawn?
Dawn. So, when I was younger, I didn't like Dawn, like a lot of people. But as I've grown up, I've realised how wrong I was, and Dawn actually becomes a really central character. I believe when Dawn was... Buffy ended up needing that something to, as her friends got stronger and her friends, like one became a witch and one got with a demon, Buffy needed someone or something to protect.
Yeah.
And and then to see the dynamic change, and obviously she was hinted at for a while. She was hinted at from season 3, I believe. Yeah. And then, we got her introduction, and the way they introduced her was perfect to me as well.
Hey. How y'all doing?
Yeah. As an audience, we were like, what the f***? What have I missed? Like,
it keeps you on your toes, doesn't it? And I think that was something it always did.
But I have grown to really enjoy Dawn. I mean, she makes some stupid decisions and stuff, but then again, she's a teenager, and we all made stupid decisions. But I'm guessing you're not a Dawn fan.
I don't think I'm Team Dawn. I don't know if it is something that, like you said, will change over time. I mean, I completely see your point in terms of why she existed and why she was there. I mean, I think I just found her so whiny, for want of a better word. And I get it. I get it's because she was thrown into that situation in her age and her perspective. I think, towards the end, like after we'd kind of got past the fact that she was the key and all of that had been sorted, I think I then grew to like Dawn and didn't mind her so much. It was the fact that it was literally all about like, oh no, I want to feel human and I'm the key and why am I here? And I was thinking, why are you here?
Shame!
But I think Dawn really came into her own in season 6 when you found out her relationship with Willow and Tara when they became like substitute mothers for her, and then that whole dynamic then with Buffy coming back and her being like, well, I've already moved on, kind of, but you're still my sister. So I thought the way that the show handled it was very good. And I've gone back to it, and I feel like my theory as to why a lot of people don't like Dawn is because when you see Dawn, it's always through Buffy's lens, and you're always seeing her as the whiny younger sister. And I mean, I've got the middle child in my family.
I'm an only child, so that's maybe why it rubbed me the wrong way.
She's the Dawn of my family. Makes stupid decisions. Shout out Claire if you're listening.
Hi Claire, just shading you on the podcast. She is.
Yeah. Actually, I talk about you a lot worse than I am on this podcast. I'm being very polite about you on this podcast. So. But no, I feel like we've covered a lot of ground with it, but some of the, I suppose, closing statements about Buffy that I'd really like to just touch on is its impact on the modern day. And we've spoken a bit about like films and stuff being inspired by it, but I also feel like there's a whole generation. Generations.
In every generation, there is a chosen one.
There's new generations discovering it for the first time. And, because I've spoken to a couple of kids in the youth group that I run, and they've discovered Buffy, and they were telling me how much it means to them and stuff. But they've been telling me how, I see myself in this character and this, and it's great to hear it. And we've spoken a lot before about gateway horror. I think Buffy is a great bridge for young adults, young teenagers, to get into horror a bit more, because there are some. It gets dark, it gets scary. I mean, the one episode that sticks out in my mind as being terrifying, and it stays with me to this day, is Ted. Ted absolutely terrified maybe because I had a stepdad as well, and I hated him.
Yeah, it was very, very creepy.
So scary, but scary not just for but
so silly as well.
But scary because it's the first time Buffy thinks she's killed a human, and it's like, shit. As I said, it still resonates to audience in this day, and especially if you grew up with Buffy, it will literally stay with you for the rest of your life.
I think that's the perfect time to get into it, isn't it? I think as you are kind of maybe simultaneously going through life at the same time as these characters, it is like it helps with so much, as well as just being a great show. I am fearful that I do think we will see a reboot at some point, because I think it's just natural. Like we said, it's not ran out of steam. Like, there's still a very hungry fan base for it, and unfortunately fan bases mean dollar signs for studios. So I don't know, it's great that we're getting the continuation with the existing characters in like the comics, and obviously we had the games and such, but I'd be interested to see where it goes. I think for now, like I said before, it's a show I can just revisit, and I don't know, I can pick up any point of any season and know where I am, know what the big bad is for that season. And it's, it's wonderful. It's by far one of my favourite kind of shows of horror, if I'd call it that exists.
So I do have a little quiz that I want to get into.
Okay.
But just before I do that, I do want to say if anyone out there would like some Buffy specific recommendations, I highly recommend watching Angel if you've never watched Angel before.
I know. I can't believe I mean, is it definitely worth checking out then?
Absolutely. Because especially if you're a Cordelia fan, which I am, not so much towards the end of Cordelia's character arc, but Cordelia gets expanded on a lot. And also, Angel doesn't end when Buffy ends. So you get to see the world on screen of what happens after all these Slayers were called. So, so there's that. There's the Dark Horse continuation in the comics. I mean, it's worth checking out the Boom Studio comics for the reimagining because it might be your cup of tea. I mean, personally, it's not mine, but they are still well done. They're very well done and they still feel like the characters. There are some great books out there that expand the universe, specifically Tale of the Slayers, where it's a book with about 6 or 7 stories in it and it's about a different Slayer and they are incredible. There are the Watcher Diaries, which is more about the TV show, and there's the script books. The script books are really good. I'm going through all the merch that I've got. And
I was going to say, I think I literally had action figures. I had so many DVDs. I had some of the VHSs. Yeah, I had the Book of Monsters. That was like my favourite thing to flick through. I love that.
And it's very rare that I'll shout out to other podcasts, but some great Buffy podcasts are Buffering the Vampire Slayer. It's a couple going through every episode bit by bit, but then there's Slayer Fest 98, which I always wanted to be on, but sadly, so if somehow they're listening, but that's looking at each episode of Buffy through a queer lens, and it's a fantastic podcast. I want to test your Buffy knowledge a little bit now.
I'm a bit scared because I like to say that I'm a big Buffy fan, but this is where it turns out I'm really not.
This is a shout out to Harrison Brocklehurst, an incredible pop culture writer who writes for a news media outlet called The Tab. Harrison's a big Buffy fan, and it's the reason why I started to follow them on Twitter. And they've got a quiz that they created. And it's titled Only the Chosen One is getting full marks on this impossible Buffy the Vampire Slayer quiz.
Oh, good Lord. Right. Okay.
So I'm not going to be harsh and go through it all because there are quite a few questions. But what I'm going to do is give the audience a bit of a taste for it. And if you really do like it, we'll link the full thing in any descriptions below.
We'll pop it in the description. But we'll give you time to play along.
It is multiple. It is multiple choice.
Okay.
Sam, the first question. What is the first line ever spoken on the TV show? Is it A, this isn't a good idea? B, are you sure this is a good idea? C, we're just going to get in trouble? Or D, do you go to school here?
Oh, okay. I'm going to say D because she comes to school. It's probably not.
It's wrong. It is. It's. Are you sure you want to be here?
Okay. God damn it.
I mean, to be fair, that is a.
Yeah.
It's not.
That's pretty hard.
Yeah.
I can't think of many shows I'd know the first line of. To be fair.
Okay, so Xander jumps in with a group of bullies who get possessed by an animal. What animal do they get possessed by?
I know this one.
Okay. So is it A, lions, B, tigers, C, bears, D, hyenas?
If it was bears, it would be quite funny if they just turned into big hairy gay men.
Yes, please.
Me. It's D, hyenas.
Congratulations.
Yes.
I do like the idea of them being taken over by bears, though. Oh my God.
That would be a whole different thing.
So, next question. So, what year was the Master's failed attempt at opening the Hellmouth before he tried again in Prophecy Girl in 1997?
Jesus Christ. Okay.
Was it A, 1924, B, 1937, C, 1943, or D, 1962?
I'm going to go with 37 just because I know that it started in 97, so I feel like there'll be an anniversary there. Sweet. Cool.
Ding, ding,
nailed
ding.
it.
You nailed it. What was the costume shop called where Ethan Rain sold everyone cursed Halloween costumes on Halloween?
Okay.
Was it A, Costume City, B, Party Town, C, Fancy Dressland, or D, Ethan's?
Was it just called Ethan's? Was it D, Ethan's?
It was just called Ethan's. Well done.
Sweet. Oh my God. I can't tell you how nervous I am at the moment. This is, I'm never this end of this.
So just a couple more. So another one. This is one of the iconic lines.
God.
What does Buffy say when she aims a rocket launcher at the judge in the finale of season 2?
Great moment.
Is it A, wanna bet, B, duck, C, that was then, this is now, or D, go to hell?
I think it's C, because I feel like there's the advent of the rocket launcher, which wouldn't have been around.
Yes, because he says, you are correct, because he talks about no weapon forged can destroy me. Well, that was then, this is now.
Bye. Amazing.
Well, you've got one more question, because I will leave it up to the listeners to go and find
the rest.
Because some of the I'm getting some of the nicer questions.
I was going to say, I feel like you've not done me too dirty on this, so thank you.
You're very welcome. So, what is Faith's surname?
Okay.
Is it A, Michaels, B, Lehan, C, Truman, or D, we never actually learn Faith's surname?
I think it's wrong, but I'm gonna go we never learn her surname.
It's wrong. It is Lehan.
Oh, that was literally, I nearly said Lehan. Jeez Louise.
I did say it earlier on in the episode as well. So.
Oh, goodness. I obviously don't listen to you then. That's what we've established.
Well, you've done well. I'll give you 3 sharp and pointy stakes out of 5 sharp and pointy stakes. There was more than 5 questions, and I'm sure you got more than 3, but
stats counting. Who needs it?
I don't do maths. I'm gay, so. So, if you would like to take the quiz yourself, as I said, we'll pop a link for it down below in any descriptions of the podcast. But it is a fun one. But before we get into any recommendations this month, there are a few little casting things I'd like to see if you knew about already.
You teased me with this before we started. I'm interested to see what could have been.
It's common knowledge that Charisma Carpenter originally auditioned for the role of Buffy. Mm-hmm. But a really interesting casting choice was made there was a really well-known actor who went for Xander's role. And I feel like it really would have changed the dynamic of the show a lot. And originally, Ryan Reynolds auditioned for the role of Xander.
That's insane.
Could you imagine?
I mean, I'd have probably liked Xander more.
Oh my God. I'd have probably have left a snail trail across my TV screen.
Good Lord.
Mm-hmm. Because if you think about 90s Ryan Reynolds, he wasn't the god that we know today. He was still a little bit dorky looking, but then if you think about when the TV show ended, he was in like the Amityville remake.
Yes, yeah. Oh God, yeah, that was around that time, wasn't it? He was very buff.
Or in like Blade 3, where he's like topless and being tortured, and he's got a 6-pack and a hairy chest. And
oh my God!
Do you want me to give you a minute?
Yes, please.
Oh my Lord.
Ryan Reynolds, if you are listening, I'm free on Thursday night. If you are free on Thursday night,
come on, Liam, you'd be free any night. Don't lie. Yeah. Don't tell him your schedule. Just you're open in more ways than one.
Yeah. So yeah, just closing in on Buffy. If anyone ever has any thoughts about Buffy or wants to talk for hours and hours on end about Buffy the Vampire Slayer, please just slide into my DMs and talk to me about Buffy, because I love it more than I love a lot of people that I know. So,
the truth.
Buffy won't balls.
No. At least you know where you are with the Slayer, I suppose. That's
So let's get into what we do every month, and let's talk about some recommendations that we may have for one another. So I know that you have maybe a recommend do not watch, so I'm intrigued by this one.
Yeah, I'll know she better don't on one of these. Yeah, so I've got a recommendation of something that I definitely don't think you should watch, but at the same time, part of me wants you to watch it just so you can experience it and then go, what have I just seen?
Okay.
And then I've kind of got a few films, two of which they're coming out in March this month. We've obviously only got trailers and kind of a brief synopsis of things at the moment, but by the time this podcast goes out, like roughly around that time, they should be available to watch, and they're what I'm excited about. So I'll start with the negative, and then we'll end with the positive. So the reason I've chosen to talk about this is because I do think it links to a film which is just iconic in the queer community, and that is Clueless, starring Alicia Silverstone. So Alicia Silverstone, I love you.
Yeah.
She's just released a film, a bad shark movie called The Requiem. Now, I absolutely love a bad shark film.
Same.
I love any type of shark film, like Sharknado 8. Let me
shout out, go Shark.
Literally, I think there's so this going off tangent. There's Amityville in Space. That's been. There's a trailer for that. That's
about that. The art. I can't believe Amityville is finally going to space, but I also can't believe the cover art for this is so bad that it's so good.
It's kind of great, yeah. I mean, it's not the Amityville house, but it's a house on an asteroid in space with a weird spider thing going on. But anyway, we digress. The Requiem, I would argue, is a tad above the production values that seem to be in Amityville in Space. But essentially, it follows a couple who are on vacation because we kind of learn in weird flashbacks that she suffered a miscarriage. So they're kind of like trying to reconnect as a couple. They're on one of these gorgeous floating like villas, you know, that you see in all the holiday like kind of guides. And then this huge storm hits, which essentially carries this villa out into the middle of the sea.
Right.
So their hotel room that's on stilts essentially then becomes a boat.
No.
And when I tell you, I mean, the thing is Alicia Silverstone, I thought was having a bit of a resurgence because she has a role which is somewhat short in a film called The Lodge, which I saw last year, which I absolutely loved. Thought she was great. And I got really excited thinking that she was in this. But Jesus Christ, is this film just bad? And I mean, like, it has to be seen to be believed. We have, like I said, a floating room. We have it's just appalling. We have flying sharks. The sharks literally fly.
Yes.
I mean, just the ending alone, you have to. I can't. So I recommend you either don't check it out or you definitely do check it out.
Is it on par with The Shallows, with the weird mystical seagull that appears in there?
So The Shallows, I would argue, is like probably one of the best shark films we've had in recent years in terms of, I think the shark looks great and I do like Blake Lively, but I will say this it very much attempts to emulate The Shallows, particularly with the ending. And it just doesn't. Like, it just keeps going. Like, I don't know. Part of me wants to go into detail about it just to kind of just tell you, but at the same time, like, I very much want you to watch it and then tell me what you think. But yeah, just I don't know what she was thinking when she did this film. So either check it out or don't. But it's hilarious.
I'm checking it out tonight. So yeah,
I expect messages. I expect a tweet along of you just
you'll get it.
Telling me your thoughts. The other like kind of two films that I'd say that we've had trailers for that I'm very excited for, and I know you've mentioned as well, is X by Ty West and A24. That's coming out 18th of March. Looks great. Looks like it's going to fulfill my Grindhouse needs that I
got a killer cast.
Yes, absolutely. And I will say as well, upon rewatching Scream 5 or 5 Cream, Jenny Ortega, I think probably is. I've warmed to her. I think she was definitely okay compared to her sister. So yeah, I'm excited for X, and there's also a Korean horror film called Uma coming out, starring Sandra Oh.
Yes, that poster.
Yes, I'm very much liking the look of. It's either going to be great or it's going to be a shit fest. But Sandra Oh, Killing Eve's returned as well, so I'm happy. So there's my recommendations, my do's and do nots for this next month. How about you?
Well, I have a big do. It's surprise, surprise. It's a book, and it's called The Fell of Dark. It's called The Fell of Dark by Caleb Roig. It has an incredible cover. I say this all the time, but again, it was the cover that caught my attention because it's got a pair of glow-in-the-dark vampire Halloween teeth on there. So I was I need to see what this is about. But it's very similar to Buffy, that it's not the usual. It's quite a tame horror. It's more drama horror than it is, straight up blood, guts, and gore. But it tells the tale of August Pfeiffer, great surname, just like Michelle, is living in a town where vampires roam freely and people know about them, very much in the vein of Sunnydale. It's called Fulton Heights, but it turns out it's like a magnet for supernatural drama and energy, and
very Sunnydale then, very there. And it treads very similar paths. There's like a hellmouth kind of thing, but it's the convergence of two ley lines, and our main character is the chosen one, and there is some very sexy vampires who he meets and has a dalliance with. But the reason why I suggest this is because if you like Buffy, you will really like this book. And if we were going to adapt Buffy into the modern age, I feel like a character like August, or Augie, as he's called a lot in the book, which I don't like. But for quite a short book, it's only 378 pages long, I believe. It does a lot of world building. You really feel drawn to these characters. There's a great ensemble cast. There's queer romance in it, but it's a coming of age story as much as it is. There's very much in the same vein as Buffy. There's like two sexy vampires who you can't decide between. It's always with the love triangles, isn't it, in vampire films? Constantly.
It says Team Edward. But yeah.
Were you actually Team Edward, or were you Team Jacob?
Team Edward.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not Team Jacob, the whiny little sod. Bella, where the hell have you been, Loca? I'm a Twilight.
The people who run the Lionsgate TikTok page need a raise because they are just everything.
I'm a Twilight apologist. I've gone full circle. I hated Twilight so much that I now love it. So maybe one day you'll be listening to my dulcet tones talking about Twilight. But yeah, this month's recommendation from me is The Fell of Dark by Caleb Roig, as well as the 1,000,001 recommendations I gave you for the Buffy Expanded Universe book. On another note quickly, for anybody who was listening last month, pre-orders are now open for the sequel to Clown in a Cornfield, Clown in a Cornfield 2, Friendo Lives. The pre-orders are now available.
That's a spoiler because I'm currently reading Clown in a Cornfield based on your recommendation. I'm having a whale of a time with it. I think it's great, but part of me was a bit like, okay, is this a clue?
It may not be. I mean, we got Jason Lives, didn't we?
I suppose. Yeah. Okay. So, I stand corrected.
So pre-orders are open now, and pre-orders are really important when it comes to book sales. Not more so than the books themselves, but they're very important for the authors because it gets more traction and it gets more publishers interested and it gets more retailers interested. And, they get more money for their incredible hard work. So if you are interested and you did like Clown in a Cornfield, please pre-order or pre-save the book wherever you can. I was going to talk about a little bit about news, but you literally stole what I was going to talk about. I was going to talk about
thunder.
Amityville has gone to space, and whether we're better off for it or not is yet to be seen.
But speaking of, obviously in news, there's been a preview for BBC Three's new horror TV show called Wrecked, which does feature a gay lead, which obviously is creating a lot of buzz at the moment, isn't it, online?
Yes, it is.
I'm quite excited for it. I know that it's all fairly stum. I don't think we've got a trailer yet, but I think is there potentially like a murder mystery sort of thing going on? I feel like
they've not really given too much away. We saw some screenshots of we saw some frames from the TV show, but that's about it really. I'm really intrigued, especially when the big thing about it is obviously there's a queer lead in the show, which I'm excited for.
I think the BBC, and especially obviously BBC Three now being back as a TV channel, I know that one of the main things that it's kind of plugging is the fact that we've got UK versus the world on Drag Race. But I do feel like they have kind of taken risks with their TV shows before.
Yeah.
I mean, In the Flesh is a great BBC Three supernatural drama, and I mean that was a few years ago now that we had that. I think back in 2013.
Lip Service, which was like the UK equivalent to the L Word, was
amazing.
Incredible. Yeah,
I mean, this is what I mean. It's things like this, and I think very much Buffy, again, harking back to the point of this episode, emphasis on
Mr.
point.
Pointy.
Mr. Pointy. I think it really did open doors. And it's good to see that it's still happening.
Yeah. Well, I would very much like everybody to dim the lights. I have a horror
no apparent
story.
reason, just turn the lights down.
Yeah, just turn the lights down.
Save the electricity.
There's an energy crisis happening here in the UK.
Jesus Christ, my bills are going up. Not in the way that you want at the strip club. Not those bills.
An extra £100 a month for me. But yeah, anyway. I have a scary story I'd like to tell you all, but you'll have to wait a minute because my cat's trying to get my attention. Bear with.
Cilla Black is back.
I was like looking at her, she meowed, and I looked at her, and the minute I looked at her, she started to lick her own minge. So
lovely.
She just wanted to tell me. Yes, I'm very proud. Daddy's very proud. Also very jealous that he can't lick his own ass. So yeah.
Wow.
I want you to dim the lights as we dive into another real-life horror story. Surprise, surprise, I was on Grindr doing what you do. I started talking to this guy, and he was sending me some pictures which looked a bit odd. I told the Uber driver not to leave until I gave a thumbs up as something was off in the pictures he was sending me. However, I was halfway up the drive to meet this guy, and the Uber driver left. He opened the door, and it was very clear that he'd catfished me and used some younger photos of himself. But I was there in the middle of the suburban desert at 40-degree midday heat in Arizona. We walk into his front room, and his sofas were all wrapped in plastic. Looks like something out of Dexter mixed with a 70s vintage VHS porn. Which, funnily enough, there was vintage 70s VHS porn playing on the TV.
Oh, good God.
I asked to use his bathroom, just so I could splash some water on my face to get out of it, make it look like I looked ill and looked like I'd just gone through something so I could get out of there. And while I was in there, I booked an Uber. So I walk out of the bathroom to find him stood outside, fully erect, trousers around his ankles. I yelped, spun around, and made eye contact with a huge poster framed of Princess Diana.
Oh no.
He stroked my shoulder and told me he liked my accent. I remind him of Lady Di. I tried to make a run for it, but the door was locked. So I turned back around, catch him masturbating in front of me, push past him and run myself back into the bathroom. I open the bathroom window and crawl out into the 40-degree Arizona heat. My Uber comes. I go home. There's a message waiting for me on Grindr. The photo, Lady Di. The end.
How did that? Oh my lord! I don't even know what to say.
Incredible. I mean, I know the person very well who sent this story in, and
Really? I thought this was just some random one that you found on the internet.
No.
This person.
None of the stories you hear on this show have been found on the internet. They are real life accounts that have happened to people. So yeah, this happened while they were in Arizona on a lovely holiday, and they walked into what sounds like a murder scene.
That's it. As soon as you see plastic wrap on anything, that's where alarm bells ring. So you're like, get out.
When would you have tapped out? And to me, it would have been the plastic wrap. But then I would have seen,
maybe when the door opened and you found that it wasn't the person you thought it was.
See, yes and no, but like,
I mean, you can be kind of forgiving, I suppose, of that because I mean, the world is cruel, and I don't look like my pictures online.
No, neither do I. Neither do I. Thank you, Facetune. But no, I think maybe, so I would have seen the plastic wrap and I would have been out, but then I maybe would have been back in if I'd have seen like the 70s porn, because I'm like, oh, okay, I'm back in. Yeah. I wanted to see like Dirk Diggler on screen in all his glory.
Love it. Why not?
And yeah, well, Dirk Diggler was your name when you were a 70s porn star.
Big Dirk Wilson, I think you'll find.
Big Dirk Wilson, that's it.
I swear. How did you feel when we filmed that? Because I felt incredibly uncomfortable.
I was fine with it. And I mean, I was ready to help out in any way that I could. So, you know what I mean?
Just to give this some context, this is from a fake 70s horror film trailer that we made where I seem to get my massive out and Liam gets his face melted. Yeah. So, yeah. Also, you chainsawed me in the bath as well. That was fun.
Yeah.
If you want to see it, go to our YouTube page, Super Freak Media. Have some fun. It's excellent. We need to make a sequel to that. I don't know if that was one of the going to make a return. To be honest.
That was so fun. But yeah, so that was this month's episode. That was this month's horror story. That was everything. Join us next month as we team up with another podcast. We're going to team up with the fabulous fairies over at Bitchcraft and Faggotry. And if you haven't listened to the Bitchcraft and Faggotry podcast,
huge shout out to them.
Yeah.
It's a great podcast.
You need to go over.
Great group of people. I can't wait to
absolutely
have them on.
So yeah, we'll be teaming up with Daisy and Kyle next month, and Sarah Michelle Gellar will be making her way back on the screens as we explore
going from one Scooby gang to another Scooby gang.
Way.
So, see what I did there.
We'll be exploring the 2 live-action Scooby-Doo films. This episode will be releasing towards the end of Women's History Month.
Yeah, perfect month for us to talk about Buffy, I think.
And perfect month for us to talk about Lady Di. So there we go.
Good God. Oh, but no, another killer episode as always. It's always a joy to get together and talk about weird things.
Yeah. So until next time, remember that closets were not made for people. They were made for monsters and babysitter killers.
And maybe vampires.
Maybe vampires.
Ooh. Goodbye now.
Bye.
You've been listening to a podcast on the Super Freak Media Podcast Network. To show your support, be sure to subscribe on whatever platform you're listening on. And you can find us on social media in the links in the description of this episode. Thank you for listening.